Previously on the Psychology of Entrepreneurship.
I am my toughest critic. There is not one motherfucker on the planet that can be harder on me than I am. And I still am to this day. I'm learning how to build a better relationship with myself when it comes to feedback. My sport's called entrepreneurship. To me, I find it really interesting that we can classify esports as a sport, which is fine, by the way, but it's essentially someone sitting on a chair playing with a joystick. Yet we're still waiting for people to classify business as a sport.
It's nefarious, man. Like, the brain works in fucked up ways.
The mind is one of the most deceiving, manipulative pieces of equipment, flesh, human bodies on earth. I never have trusted my brain.
All of that weight lives in your head, and you are the decision maker.
Psychology of Entrepreneurship.
Hi, it's Ronsley. If this is your first volume, welcome. This is a weekly series where I go inside the mind of an entrepreneur, artist, athlete, academic to decipher what is the psychology of our decisions. I'm Australian, and I'd like to acknowledge our traditional custodians of country where I live and work. I pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and acknowledge our continuous connection and contribution to land, sea, and community. You know, the thing about having a podcast is that on most days, I don't really know how to begin what I'm about to put out. I don't know what the best way to present a topic is, and I just take my best guess and hope that in the end, it all falls together in place. And sometimes it doesn't, and my team makes sure that I stay true to our values and our commitment to having the hard conversations. So, to that point, I want to bring up the concept of equity. And by the way, equity is very different from equality, and we will get into the difference in a little bit. But before that, are men and women equal? Even posing this question gives me a sick feeling in my tummy, but it is a question that is avoided. It is a question that, because avoided, makes us default to our pre-existing patterns that have been handed down by previous generations. So even if you intellectually believe that we are equal, if you don't sit with this question long enough, you will default to what your parents and teachers taught you or believed and passed over to you. So if you are offended by me asking the question, then I feel like I am going to have to ask your permission to offend.
I am Rachel Luna, the host of the Permission to Offend podcast, creator of the Faith Activated Journaling Experience, and the founder of the Confidence Activated Live event. I'm a master certified neuroscience coach, and I am the coach behind multiple 6- and 7-figure earning entrepreneurs. I hold space, help shift mindsets, and I am your support system as you support thousands of others. I'm here to help you activate your faith, your worth, and your wealth.
So today we are talking with Rachel Luna, and you are in for a treat. And we get in deep pretty quick because there is an important question. The question being, who are you? Or who am I? It is a question that Rachel really wants us to ask ourselves as often as we get the chance to. Rachel?
Well, first of all, it's meant to be a difficult question, and it's a trick question. You are meant to ask this question every day because life is dynamic. We will always change. We are constantly evolving, right? Where the question comes from is, again, my core belief when I think about entrepreneurs and why things happen and why things don't is because we need, and not just in entrepreneurship, really in life, we need to be connected with who am I when I'm not worried about what other people think of me? Who am I when nobody's looking? Who am I when everything that I love is being threatened? So when you know that, then you have guiding principles that you can from which you can operate, okay? And every day you get to ask yourself, who am I And who do I desire to be, right? And the reason why I say then, what do you want? Because people will say, well, I want to be financially free. Well, what does that mean? How much money do you need to be financially free? Well, I don't know. Of course you don't know. You haven't taken the time to ask the question. So now you're in pursuit of this phantom goal. It's impossible to shoot at a target that you can't see. You don't even know where it's at. You don't know what direction. You just know it's out there somewhere. So we have to bring it back down at the granular level. Who am I today? What do I want today? And if I were to get that, who would I need to be in order to be able to receive that, right? So if I say, I am healthy, but my lab work is saying something other than that, right? Because I'm a breast cancer survivor. If I say I'm healthy, I'm a healthy woman, that is me at my core, the identity, I am someone who is healthy. But I look at my lab work and the labs are showing, well, the liver's a little and the white blood cells. Okay, who do I need to be to have great white blood cell count? I need to be someone who's juicing and hitting the sauna and exercising and doing everything she can to detox and replenish with nutrients. So that's one part of your identity, the identity of a healthy human being. If I say I am love, who am I? I am love. I'm the image of love. Okay, well then what does love look like when I'm confronted with my enemy? Well, do I have the capacity to be that loving person in the eyes of my enemy today? I don't know, maybe not. So then who am I going to be? And from this, we can make better life decisions, which results in better life experience.
Rachel Luna has done lots of really amazing things, but you know what the coolest thing is? Well, the coolest thing is...
I think the coolest thing that I've gotten to experience in the last decade was driving in the car with my children, and I was listening to my own podcast. I listened back to it because I think that's how we get better, right? You want to listen, it's hard. It's hard to watch yourself. It's hard to go through your own courses and programs. But if you can get through your own stuff and you feel like, damn, that's good, then you've created something special that's going to change someone's life. So I listen to my own content to make sure that in each episode, I feel like, ooh, that was good. And if I don't feel that way, then I go make a mental note of like, okay, I should stay away from these topics because I'm not there yet. But we're listening and the episode ends and my daughter says, that was a really good episode, Mom. And I said, oh, you were listening? Because, they're on their, phones or whatever. And at the time she was 10, she's 12 now. And she says, yeah, I learned something. I said, oh, what did you learn? She said, I learned to be confident and to trust myself no matter what other people say. And it was just this moment that, like, even as I think about it, it kind of like it hits me in the stomach and it takes my breath and a lump forms in my throat. And it makes me think of every single late night leading up to that, right? Because there was 8 years before that moment of me building this business and working hard and feeling like a crappy mom, like I'm choosing my job over them and wondering, am I teaching them enough? Am I spending enough time? Are they learning more from me than they are from the outside world? And are they learning the most important things? And up until that point, I felt like a really unworthy mom. And then she just said those little words, like I learned something and I learned confidence. And I thought, wow, my mission is fulfilled. I've done what I came to do, which, I'm entrusted with these 2 little girls. So it really, when I think about it, if I impact 1 million people, but I don't impact these 2 little girls that have been entrusted in my day-to-day care, I have failed massively. So that has been the best moment.
Something that we constantly hear our guests say on this series is that knowing your why is one of the most important steps as an entrepreneur. According to Harvard leadership expert Bill George, He believes that the best leaders and entrepreneurs follow their intrinsic rather than extrinsic motivations. In an article on Forbes, they break down some areas that Bill identifies as effective sweet spots that can align one's strengths with their intrinsic motivations. These include things like making a difference in the world, finding personal meaning from building a business, and helping others to achieve their goals.
To understand her message, you got to understand the history and the attitude of service that she has. Well, that's my opinion. Listen to this and have your own opinion, that is.
I joined the Marine Corps when I was 19 years old. And at the time, I joined in the reserves thinking I would be a weekend warrior. You just play Marine, if you will. And then in 2003, we went to war. And I remember at the time I was working at the national headquarters office for Toyota Motor Sales, and I was in their management training program. I got my Bachelor of Science degree from Penn State University. And I really thought that I was going to have this big corporate career and that the Marine Corps was just this like fun thing that I got to do and this fun thing that I got to be a part of. I didn't really understand at 19 years old what it really meant. But here we were, 2003, and my unit was called up to duty. And I remember sitting in my office writing a will and preparing all of my affairs to leave corporate America, go overseas, first to Kuwait, then to Iraq. And one of my supervisors stopped at my desk and he said, "What does it feel like to write your will at 22 years old?" I was 22 at the time, about to turn 23. And I just instinctively responded, "It feels like the greatest honor. It feels like this is what I have trained for. And it feels like if I'm going to die for anything, what better reason to die?" And then I went off and I went to Kuwait, and I was really blessed because I've always worked with a really great team of Marines. And of course, being a female in a very male-dominated environment, you are going to have moments of sexism and just guys seeing how far they can go. And so I had already had an experience where I was, physically, I would say, touched because I defended myself. But if I had pressed charges, the guy would have been brought up on sexual assault charges because the way that he touched me was really aggressive. It was, on my private parts and whatever. But so here I am in Kuwait and getting ready to move forward into Iraq. And I remember one of the commanding officers saying, "The day a female goes into combat before I do is when pigs will fly." And it was just this moment when I thought, okay, in 2003, I thought to myself, it's 2003. How could this exist, right? How could sexism and racism, how could any of those things be a thing in 2003? But no, it was alive then. And sadly, it's still alive today, 2021. So the funny thing is, my sergeant and I, two females, ended up crossing into Iraq like almost a full year before this guy got his chance to get into action. And so, though I had those wonderful bittersweet moments, but I will say I carried on active duty for several more years after that. And I loved being a Marine. It is the greatest honor of my life. Despite everything that's happening in the United States right now, I still have a deep love and appreciation for this country and for what it represents, for what it was built on. Now, that being said, let's not forget that some of the things that this country, some of the ideas that this country was built on were flawed. And I am in pursuit of the purest part of that, of defending our freedoms, creating equity, not just equality, right? The United States was founded on equality, but we really need to focus on equity. And I just want to give credit to my good friend, Trudy LeBron, for helping me recognize that we are in pursuit of the wrong thing when we keep saying equal, because equal but separate is still not equity.
You know, sexism is everywhere. And if you don't see it and recognize it, it is hard to stand up for it. This is Lieutenant General David Morrison in 2015 with a strong message that you need to hear.
Earlier today, I addressed the media and through them the Australian public about ongoing investigations into a group of officers and NCOs whose conduct, if proven, has not only brought the Australian Army into disrepute, but has let down every one of you and all of those whose past service has won the respect of our nation. There are limits to how much I can tell you because the investigations into this network by both the New South Wales Police and the ADF Investigative Service are ongoing. But evidence collected to date has identified a group of men within our ranks who have allegedly produced highly inappropriate material demeaning women and distributed it across the internet and Defence's email networks. If this is true, then the actions of these members are in direct contravention to every value the Australian Army stands for. By now, I assume you know my attitude to this type of conduct. I have stated categorically many times that the Army has to be an inclusive organisation in which every soldier, man and woman, is able to reach their full potential and is encouraged to do so. Those who think that it is okay to behave in a way that demeans or exploits their colleagues have no place in this Army. Our service has been engaged in continuous operations since 1999 and in its longest war ever in Afghanistan. On all operations, female soldiers and officers have proven themselves worthy of the best traditions of the Australian Army. They are vital to us maintaining our capability now and into the future. If that does not suit you, then get out. You may find another employer where your attitude and behaviour is acceptable, but I doubt it. The same goes for those who think that toughness is built on humiliating others. Every one of us is responsible for the culture and reputation of our Army and the environment in which we work. If you become aware of any individual degrading another, then show moral courage and take a stand against it. No one has ever explained to me how the exploitation or degradation of others enhances capability or honours the traditions of the Australian Army.
While we were doing our research on this topic, of course, we came across this viewpoint about women in the military.
What do you think about women in service and women in leadership and women in corporate?
So
Start with service.
Yes. This is where it tends to get a little controversial for me. When I was in Fort Sill, Oklahoma, which is where I did my basic training, we were one of the first units to be a co-ed training unit. And in my experience and what I saw is that when you have multiple standards, the lower standard is the one that's enforced and upheld.
Explain multiple standards.
Well, so take the physical fitness training requirements for the military. Well, the standard for women is lower. They can run slower, do less push-ups, do less sit-ups. The standard, naturally, that makes sense. Men are generally stronger. So there's two standards.
This person's name isn't important. And if you want to listen to the rest of his spiel and who he is, then it'll be in the show notes at psychologyofontrepreneurship.com. But what he is failing to point out is that you don't have to be faster, stronger, or bigger to win. Intuition and self-awareness, of which this person has none, can win you faster and quicker than any amount of brute force could. We know that. But we have morons like this who are not challenged on their false logic. And you are going to ask me, hopefully, maybe, what do you mean by win, Ronsley? Well, isn't the military's job to keep us safe? And if winning is keeping us safe, then there is no one in the history of our species that has a better track record of keeping people safe. Mothers. So it's all a bit disjointed in the logic that men have to be stronger, faster, better, and that we have to drop our standards to include women. In having all these conversations, understanding equity and equality are really important to facilitating the right kinds of outcomes. And we will go into that deeper a little later on because I wanted to bring up the biggest issue with entrepreneurs. Yes, I said biggest.
For me, one of the biggest issues and why I think most entrepreneurs struggle is because of the lack of identity, because they don't know who they are or whose they are or what they value or what they believe, because in particular in this online marketing space, we are so conditioned to follow the person that says they're making the most money. We are not asking, nor are we being shown receipts of, yeah, you're making $100 million a month, but you're spending 1.2 million in Facebook ads, and you're borrowing from Peter to pay Paul, and you have lines of credit, and you know, you've got a Lamborghini, but it's purchased with someone else's money, right? We are not asking the right questions. We're asking poor questions, and it's leading to poor results. And so one of my missions in life is to teach people how to ask better questions, because when you know what to ask for, you will find who's real and who's not.
Who is real and who is not? That is a perspective one needs to keep before we talk about some important equity issues.
Psychology of Entrepreneurship. Our aim with this audio documentary has always been to build a strong community of entrepreneurs and creatives to provide a space where they can use their voice to share their authenticity with the world. As a valued listener, your voice matters too. We love to hear your feedback and ideas, so don't be shy to let us know how we're doing in the ratings and comments. If you have a message for our production team or know someone who would be a perfect fit as a guest, you can find out more information on how to share your input at psychologyofontrepreneurship.com.
Hey, welcome back. Rachel, you were going to tell us the difference between equity and equality.
So equal means everybody has the same thing. Equity means everyone has what they need. And we need to make sure that everyone is getting what they need to thrive, right? Not just to survive. So if you listen to that episode on my show, Permission to Offend, you're going to hear me talk about how I grew up being taught not to see color, right? So if I were to describe this interview right now, I'd say, oh yeah, I chatted with a guy. But now in the culture, in the society that we live in, if I don't acknowledge that you're not a white man, I'm actually doing you a disservice, right? For me as well, you know, I am a Latina woman, but I'm light. Depending on if I've been indoors all winter, I am white passing for all intents and purposes. The reason why in today's world, it's important that we acknowledge that there is color is so that we can identify where racial disparity and inequality and a lack of equity exists. If we look at the education system, and I was taught not to see color, and I would get in trouble if I said, oh, I was talking to this Indian guy. Why he got to be an Indian guy? Why can't he just be a guy, right? That would be the response. The reason they did that was so that then they wouldn't have to look and see why were the minority children not doing as well as the white children in class, in education. So then they wouldn't have to address there are things happening in the children of color homes that are not happening in predominantly white homes, right? Because of the disparity in the socioeconomical situations. So if we don't see it, if we don't acknowledge it, then we don't have to deal with it. If we don't see it, it doesn't exist.
Rachel is coming up with a new book, I'm told, and the book that she wrote first was based on 4 basic values or traits. And while she might not like this particular book of hers because maybe she's gotten better at expressing herself, I really wanted her to break down these traits. Why? Well, we all have different meanings for words, don't we?
Well, in order to be successful, you really have to have courage, because it takes a lot of courage to do anything that we're doing in the online space. Like, marketing takes courage and confidence. And I think people sometimes think like, I'll wait till I feel confident, and they don't realize that confidence is actually a byproduct. It is the result of action. It is the product of knowledge. It is the result of failure, right? The more you go, the more mess ups, you start to pick up things here and there. But all of that gets rooted in one courageous act. I set up a website. I self-published this book that, I sold the book before I had finished writing it. So I had to deliver.
So the first one is courage. Rachel, what's the second?
Resilience. Again, when I thought about not just my own life, but the people that I interview in the book, and Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps, John Estrada, is a good friend of mine, and he agreed to be interviewed in that book. And, just listening to some of his stories and things that he had experienced, and I really connected, like, listen, if you're going to get ahead, you have to be resilient. You cannot allow yourself to be a victim, even when you've been victimized. And there's a difference, right? So I, as a child, had been victimized, but how I chose to move forward and operate was I could be a victim, or I could say, no, screw this, I'm taking back my power. And for many years, I lived as a victim. And I really credit one therapist who I hated, man. I hated this woman. I hated going into that office, because she was the only therapist, and I had been in and out of therapy my entire life since I was 4 years old. And at the time that she really taught me these lessons, I was about 21. But I hated going to her because she was the only therapist that would not coddle me. She was the only therapist that would call me out on my BS, on my victim stories. And I remember the clearest day, I was leaving her office and I had made the decision, I'm never coming back to this lady. And she looked at me and she said, you are not a victim, and I don't treat victims. So if you're going to come back, you need to come back differently. And I remember thinking, well, in my mind, like, great, I'm not coming back anyway. But something happened, because as I crossed the threshold of that door, I asked myself, well, wait a second. I want to be different. And if I stay this way, then I am not different. Maybe she's right. Maybe I am being a victim. Because, by the way, I thought I was big and bad and tough. So for her calling me a victim, I was like, no, I'm not. I'm not a victim. These things happen to me. And it's because I didn't understand the difference between being victimized and owning the identity of a victim. So again, Ronsley, you see how identity plays into everything. So you have to be resilient. You have to have that thick skin. People are judging you all day long. Sometimes the judgment is positive. Sometimes it's negative. Your job is to not care whether you're being judged positively or negatively. Yours is to embrace the fact that judgment is being bestowed upon you, because if someone is judging you, that means that they are listening and they are paying attention. And so you have a moment to say whatever you want to say, and the right people are going to receive it and take it and run with it, and the wrong people are going to be repelled. And that's cool, because when it comes to marketing, you want to repel. You don't want the pain in the butt clients.
In an article by Entrepreneur India on how to care less about what other people think, they highlight an idea by famous entrepreneur and best-selling author Seth Godin. He believes that life throws you two choices at any given scenario: being criticized or being ignored. The idea is that it's up to you to decide if you want to be criticized or ignored. By viewing feedback as a sign you did something noteworthy and not as a sign that you did something wrong, you'll stop holding yourself back because of judgments made by others. The link for that article can be found in the full version of this volume's show notes.
Resilience is the second trait. What's the third?
Authenticity, right? My friend Jamie Kern-Lima says this best: you can't fake authenticity, right? She is the founder of IT Cosmetics. She sold it to L'Oreal for $1.2 billion. She was rejected and rejected and rejected. She has a great book called Believe It. You can go to believeit.com. Totally plugging Jamie. That is a book you should read. So if you have to choose between buying my book and Jamie's book, go out and buy Jamie's book. It's a great book. But storytelling is fantastic. But when we're talking about resilience, I mean, she was rejected daily for 10 years, pretty much. So, but authenticity is you allowing yourself to be you under any circumstance. So you don't have to change to make other people feel comfortable in your presence. That's not your job. It's their job to adjust. It's our job as individuals to learn how to self-regulate. So if I'm in an uncomfortable position, then I get to do several things to help me self-regulate. I can say, I'm uncomfortable. Would you like to change your tone? Or I can get out of Dodge, or I can say, you know what, I'm uncomfortable, but I need to be here because I need to make sure that things don't go awry in my absence. So I'm going to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And this is something that I think people don't want to do. They want to be cushy, you want it to be easy. I'm all for letting it be easy. And also sometimes you have to be uncomfortable. It's the only way the growth happens. And so authenticity, that's, just let yourself be you. Again, back to the identity.
So if authenticity is the third, the final one is?
And then perseverance. There's a difference between resilience and perseverance. And so let's clarify that, right? Resilience means when people are kind of butting up against you, you're weathering the storm, right? So you're in the storm and you're taking it. Perseverance means the storm is over. You just got your butt handed to you. You're knocked down. Are you going to get up and keep going? Okay. So you have to be able to keep going. If I had allowed all the things that happened to me as a kid stop me or knock me down, then the thousands of women that I've been able, and men, that I've been able to help over the last decade, I'm sure somebody else would have helped them, but not the way that I did. Not facilitating the transformation and the breakthroughs that I did, because nobody is going to follow somebody that's down. They're only going to follow someone who's marching forward. And I'm a leader, so come on, let's go.
Courage, resilience, authenticity, and perseverance spells out C.R.A.P. And I asked her how she came up with that.
I really had this ambition of being an author. So I write the book, Successful People Are Full of Crap. And I remember coming up with the title while doing dishes. And my thought was, I want to write a book about success, but what do successful people have? And it should be an acronym and it should be catchy, because in the Marine Corps, everything is an acronym, right? JJ did tie buckle, BAMSIS, there's an acronym for everything. So it was perfect. And I heard my husband listening to MMA in the background. And one of the MMA fighters was like, yeah, my new book came out. And it was like, SHIT or something like that. It was some acronym. And I was like, well, I'm not going to have a curse on the cover. Crap. Yeah. Okay. Now let me find words that fit into C.R.A.P. Literally, this is how the whole thing comes together. So courage, resilience, authenticity, perseverance. As I began to sit with that, I just really paralleled my own life. And like you said, I've had some, traumatic experiences in childhood. I lost both of my parents to AIDS. I dealt with, sexual abuse and alcoholism and promiscuity and just, pick a trauma. I'm sure I've experienced it at some point in my life.
Psychology of
Entrepreneurship. Coming up on the Psychology of Entrepreneurship.
I don't have access to a lot of the materials to bring some of my ideas to reality. I'd like to paint, so something as simple as painting. I don't have access to paints. I don't have access to canvases or brushes or anything like that. The compulsion to create, it is irresistible in me. I can't fight it. It has to come out. And so if it can't come out in what I would say the conventional ways, the ways that I would like, it's still going to come out in some kind of way. And so, yes, it does challenge me to be creative in how I am creative.
Psychology of Entrepreneurship.
I interviewed Rachel Luna because she has been featured in Forbes, Huffington Post, and Success Magazine. She is the best-selling author of the book Successful People Are Full of Crap, Courage, Resilience, Authenticity, Perseverance, a step-by-step guide to getting it together and achieving your dreams. She's an international speaker, a former US Marine, and the host of Permission to Offend. She is a mother, a leader, and now a friend.
Psychology of Entrepreneurship.
This is a Must Amplify production. Special thanks to every guest expert that has appeared on the show. Editing, voiceovers, and sound design by Kaylee Bonnyman and Tiago Vega. Guest research by Jenna Elliott. Content by Corinne Castles. Project managed by the legend that is Kaylee Bonnyman. Produced and hosted by me, Ron Slivaz. For more episodes and where to listen, go to mustamplify.com/POE.
Love the polished audio docuseries style of this podcast, The Psychology of Entrepreneurship? At We Are Podcast, you can learn how to create a similar style for your own show. This revolutionary virtual event assembles podcasters, entrepreneurs, and marketers in one spot, so you're able to learn from the masters. Head straight to wearepodcast.com to reserve your spot at our next event. Are you still listening? Here's a little gift to you for sticking around.